Welcome. We are going to get started in just a minute. We'll just kind of wait and see if anyone else is going to join us. So hang tight and we'll get started in just a minute. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for our fourth Community Climate Forum, Getting Started with Composting. My name is Lisa Lidges, and I will be your host and moderator tonight. I'm a Conservation Education Liaison at the St. Louis Zoo and co-chair of the Zoo's Climate Change Task Force. Before I introduce our presenter, I wanted to give a quick overview of how the webinar will work. First, it is being recorded and will be shared at stlzoo.org/climate change, probably where you registered for the webinar tonight. And because it is a webinar, we're unable to see or hear you during the presentation, but we will open the floor, so to speak, at the end of the discussion. A few of my colleagues will be assisting me in monitoring the Q&A in the chat, so please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A and any thoughts or discussion points in the chat. Please remember to be respectful and courteous to our presenter, panelists, and each other, and please keep your questions and thoughts relevant to the presented topic. If someone is unable to follow these protocols, their comment or question will be removed and they themselves may be removed entirely from the webinar, but I doubt we'll have an issue with that tonight. Our presenter will leave us as much time as possible at the end of his discussion to address questions and discussion points. So now, without further ado, let's begin. Our distinguished presenter tonight is Jason Ayran. Jason has been serving the St. Louis Zoo for more than 5 years on the workforce development team. In addition to being a composting enthusiast, Jason enjoys playing baseball with his two sons, Nicholas and Thomas, and trying new restaurants with his wife, Sarah. He also enjoys playing guitar, watching sitcoms, and golfing. Take it away, Jason.
Thank you for that great welcome. Good evening to you all joining us live, and welcome, and good evening to anyone watching the recorded version. I'm really excited to share this topic with you, getting started with composting. All right, so I want to share with you a little bit of a background as to, why did we get started composting? Why did our family start composting? And it started about three or 4 years ago. My wife just said, hey, why don't we start doing this? We cook with a lot of fruit and vegetables. The kids eat a ton of fruit, and we have all this waste that goes into our bins. Why don't we just start composting? We have the space for it. And I was like, you know what? That sounds like a great idea. Let's get going. I don't know how to begin this process, but let's start off with a bin. And from then on, it just kind of took off. So tonight, I'm going to share with you a little bit more information on how you could get started with composting. All right. So I do have a poll question for the folks here. What is your current level of experience with composting? If you could answer that question on the poll, that would be great. Hey. Thank you for sharing that. That helps me understand where you're coming from in terms of your level of experience. All right, so I wanted to share with you some benefits of composting, and these are really the things that helped my family drive home our need to start. First of all, it's a fun activity. My kids, they are part of my composting team. It's so much fun to go outside, especially when it's warmer out, add to the bin, mix the contents in there and see the little critters in there. And it becomes almost like an educational activity where we can identify different kinds of invertebrates in the bin. I know my kids always say, Daddy, are you feeding the compost today? As if it were a living thing. And honestly, it is a living thing. So it's a fun activity for my kids and I. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's a great way to reduce those odors in your kitchen. We know what it smells like whenever you have 3-day-old vegetable peels sitting in your bins. It doesn't smell very good, especially in the summertime when the flies start identifying that you have them there too. It's free organic fertilizer. It really it's a nice way to add to your yard, to your plants, and thus reduce your need for chemical fertilizers if any of you use that. And obviously, there's climate change implications here, right? So it does reduce methane emissions, which affect the climate. I've got a graphic here I want to share with you that kind of shows what is in a normal trash bag. And you can see here, 21% of it is food scraps alone. Then you've got cardboard. Some people put in yard trimmings and wood waste. That's a good chunk of your trash bags that could be composted instead. We can keep those away from the landfill. And if we can keep those away from the landfill, there's less methane going into the environment and less impact on climate. So really encourage you to think about composting and share it with your family and friends too. I picked up this quote from compostingcouncil.com. Again, just really driving home the fact that you're reducing your methane impact in the environment. All right, so my discussion points for you all today. I'm going to share with you some materials to help you get started. I'm going to share with you how do you get started in your bin, how do you maintain it throughout the year, and some best practices for sharing the finished product. What I'm going to share with you tonight, though, I'm going to make sure you understand this. This is solely my approach. I am not an expert. I am an enthusiast. So there are many different methods to composting, many of which can be found online. I encourage you to continue learning more and figure out what works best for you. All right, so what do we have here? How do we get started? You're going to want a bin fenced-in area for your contents. The thermometer, there's a compost thermometer, which I'll talk about later. Pitchfork or a shovel would be fantastic to have. Countertop composting can, some way to collect those fruit peelings, your vegetables, things like that. You're going to definitely need water for your bin, green and brown materials, which I'll talk about later, and bungee cords. Drive home the fact that there is, again, no wrong way to do this. There are several different ways to start composting. Any of these methods that you see on the slide are fine, but for purposes of tonight, I'm going to share with you my setup, and it involves the bin here on the bottom left that you see here circled in red. All right, so this is my bin setup, and these pictures are from the past summer. You can see my tomatoes there in the background doing well. I have the luxury of my backyard is west facing, so I have as much sun as I need to heat up these bins. Really helpful to have that west facing. But if you don't have that, that's okay too. Don't worry about that. You'll notice that I have 3 bins. You don't have to have 3 bins. Like I said, I'm an enthusiast, so I have 3. You can easily start off with just the 1 bin if you so choose. And I mentioned bungee cords. You're probably asking, why do you need bungee cords for composting? And I use those bungee cords to keep the bins closed. Sometimes I get visits from the neighborhood cats, squirrels, and possums. They get a little curious, and the cord helps to keep them out of the bins. All right, so how do we fill our bin? Well, in the composting world, we talk about greens and browns. And this slide kind of depicts what a green and what a brown is. Okay, so tea leaves, eggshells, coffee grounds, vegetable fruit waste. Those are all great examples of greens. Your browns, cardboard, leaf waste, straw, twigs, newspaper, all of these are examples of browns, and you need both to have a good compost in your bin. I'm going to point out here delivery boxes, especially this time of year. Many of us do shopping online and you get those delivery boxes. That cardboard, if you want to save it, those are great ways to add to your bin. Remove the tape first, though, before you put it in your bin, but plenty of cardboard around. When it comes to newspaper, I want to caution you, don't use the glossy paper, right? It's got chemicals in them. You don't want that in your bin. Just use the regular newspaper, the black and white. You don't want the glossy in there. And I forgot to mention earlier in my bin setup here, you can find these bins at your local hardware stores and nurseries. They're all around. And the little picture here that I have on this slide, this is an example of what my family uses on our countertop to collect vegetable and fruit waste, just like you'll see on this next slide here. We actually got a bigger bin because we had so much, but this is an example of what one night what we could collect based on the vegetable waste that we have here. And as you can see, mixture of egg whites, egg shells, corn, some broccoli waste, and you can almost see it looks like coffee grounds in there too. I don't know what we were cooking that night, but we were cooking something green. So you can use bins like these on your countertop to store your fruit and vegetable waste. I will advise you, make sure you empty this out daily and put them in your bin or your pile, or the flies, especially in the summer, will gladly begin the composting process in your kitchen, and we don't want that. All right, so I have a poll question for you all. Second one here. In the composting world, we talk about the ratio of greens to browns. So what do you think the ratio of browns to greens should be in your bin? Take a guess there. Okay, yeah, a couple of different answers there. Well, here's what I'll tell you about that. When I first started composting, I was researching so many websites to figure out what is the right ratio, because I don't want to mess this up. So one website said this. One website said this, 50-50. One website said 30-1. Another one said 4-1. You get the theme here, right? 25 or 30-1. After doing this, I was very confused and almost frustrated and almost wanted to stop because I did not want to mess this up. I will tell you this, it's not a perfect science. Composting will happen even if your bin has more greens or more browns than what's recommended. You might not get compost as quickly as you want, especially if you have a lot of browns, or your bin might smell for a while too if you have a lot of greens. But rather than focusing on the ratio, I'm going to give you a visual that helped me. So this is a photo I took from Otter Tail, Minnesota, one of their website. And this is the model that I used to layer contents in my bin. And I've reaped great results from this approach. Now, I don't have a pallet at the bottom like this graphic shows. Rather, I used stocky materials such as twigs and brush cuttings right against the dirt, against the soil. So this is a method that worked for me. So now that we've selected our bin and we've filled it with contents, I'm going to share with you some of my best practices to maintain your bin throughout the year. So we know that you'll continue to have more greens as the year goes on. So as you add in your greens, be sure to cover it with the browns, with the leaves and things like that, and then the cardboard and the paper, so that you don't attract those critters to your bin. It also will help it break down quicker. And you can see some photos there of me adding in various types of greens into our bin. Some people use the approach of set it and forget it, meaning they put the stuff in there, they fill up their bin, and they leave it for the year. And that's totally fine. You can use that method. But if you want, you can speed up the process. But you won't know what type of materials you need to add to the bin unless you know the temperature. So you'll see on that picture there a compost thermometer. A thermometer is a great way to determine how your bin is heating. And the ideal temperature is in that green area that you can see there when it's really active. Now, if it's cooling down, which it appears that this bin is doing, it's okay. But if you wanted to keep it more active and help the bin work a little bit quicker, my advice to you is to add in air to the bin and by turning it, and then also add water to the contents as well. So turning over the contents with a pitchfork or a shovel, it's a great workout. It's what my kids helped me do, and it was a workout for them as well. And it can be strenuous as you add in more things to the bin. So for those of you that don't have the energy or don't want to expend that much effort into your bin, that's okay too, because there's an alternative method. What you can do is get a piece of rebar from your local hardware store and shove the greens from the top, toss it into your bin, and you're basically going to poke holes and shove those greens into the middle of your bin where it's warmer. And again, add water. And by doing that, you're introducing oxygen, you're introducing air to your bin. The greens will break down quicker, the bin will warm up and become compost much quicker. So that's a really good tip that I wish I would have known earlier in the process. But no bin can do it by itself. It was beneficial that I was able to get some help from some friends. And when I say friends, you can see the invertebrates in this photo here. And I actually have some video of what this looked like. So you can see it's a pretty active bin right now. These were my friends over the summer. These were my friends that helped me create that compost quicker and break down the materials in there. It was a really good relationship. Again, a great opportunity to share this with your kids and show them the science that is in your bin and the relationship between the contents of your bin and with the invertebrates there as well. So I have a chat. Oh, whoop, I just ruined the chat. I was going to put in the chat, what critters do you see? But it appears I clicked a little bit too quickly. With some help from one of my friends in the invertebrates team, we were able to identify the following invertebrates here: isopods, black soldier fly larvae, and springtails. Now, if you see anything else in that bin other than those three creatures, feel free to contribute that in the chat. Again, and also, as we started adding more contents to the bin and going out to the bin more often, we could see nature occurring near the bins. This is what I've learned is called a braconid wasp. So what's happening here is there's white obtrusions, are actually the cocoons of a parasitic wasp. The female wasp has laid her eggs under the skin of that tomato hornworm. So this bin is located next to my tomato plants. And as the eggs hatch, the larvae actually feed on the hornworm insides. The larvae eat their way out of the caterpillar and spin cocoons that you see here. So yeah, really interesting creatures, and to see how they work and how they live around your bin. Really fascinating. Well, it's December 9th today, and you're probably wondering, well, can composting happen in the winter? And my answer to you is an emphatic yes. you absolutely can maintain and add contents to your bin throughout the winter time, even when it's really cold and almost freezing. You can absolutely continue adding contents there. This is some optional tips for you as you continue composting throughout the winter, or for maybe some of you here starting to compost. This is what I do, and it's gotten me some good results throughout the winter. So what I like to do is add cardboard and straw on the bottom and sides of my bin. So kind of in the inside of the bin, but on the outer perimeter of it to protect it from a lot of the wind that's going to come this winter, especially in the north facing side of my bin. If there are straw bales around that you can get from maybe a neighbor that doesn't use them anymore, or from a local business, straw bales are great to have. You can stack them to almost insulate your bin, so that way the heat stays there and continues working throughout the wintertime. Another added benefit of that approach is the straw bale contents. Well, guess what? Now you've got browns you can add to your bin in the spring when it starts to thaw. You can request for coffee grounds. One of the common things you're going to encounter is that you might not have as many greens, or you want your bin to be a little bit warmer than it already is. And a great way to do this is to get coffee grounds. Coffee grounds are a great way to heat up your bin, especially using that rebar to shove those contents into the middle of your bin. What has worked for me is asking a local coffee shop, basically, if I could have their coffee grounds for the day, and they will store the grounds. They will keep them in a bag. Even the filters are okay. And what the local store near me has allowed me to do is to pick up the contents from them the next day. And now you have a whole bag of coffee grounds and filters you can add to your bin. It's a great way to add to it throughout the winter time. You can also put a tarp over your bin as well. I don't really do this approach, but I have some friends that do use tarp in the wintertime. So like I mentioned, composting is going to happen one way or another. It is always happening, and it might be really slow, but this is a way to keep it going a little bit quicker in the wintertime. So in the spring and summer, you're going to encounter a different problem. You're going to encounter a lack of browns for your bin. And you're going to want to find a way to basically, how do you add more browns to your bin when there's not a lot going on? Everything that you've collected is green now. Well, this is what I've done to ensure that I have enough browns for the spring and summer. So your deliveries from your favorite online retailer probably come in cardboard boxes. Again, remove that tape and label from them, and then you can cut that cardboard into small pieces. Great activity for the kids, by the way, and store them away if you have space. Egg cartons are perfect browns, great to store as well. Leaf waste. So I choose to leave my leaves in my yard or mulch them with my mower. However, you might have neighbors around you that choose to remove their leaves. And if they choose to do so, I have a few. I asked them if I can haul their bags of leaf waste away for free. I don't charge them. And if they say yes, I basically take those leaves into my front yard. I will hook up my bag to my mower and mulch those leaves into tiny pieces and pour those contents into a larger bin in my garage. And what I'm able to do is, you would be surprised how many bags of leaves, once you shred them and chop them up, will fit into a large waste bin for the winter time. What's a nice benefit to that too is the paper bags that those come in. Guess what? Those are your browns for the spring and summer too. So if you have storage or a way to save all that, great way to keep those browns for the winter time so you can use them next season. Right. So now you're at the point where you've got some finished product in there. Well, you should be asking yourself, how do I know when it's safe to put in my yard? How do I know when it's safe to share with my family and friends? There's a process called curing that I'm going to talk about. So if you place immature compost near your plants, the bacteria that breaks down compost are using, it's still breaking down, right? Because it's not mature. So it's going to be taking available nitrogen near it. And when that happens, you're robbing your plants and your grass from that nitrogen. So it's not a good effect on your plants and grass. So you really want to make sure that that compost is ready. So with this process of curing, what I like to do is turn my pile, even when I see that it's close to being finished, there's not a lot of green contents left in there, it's mostly soil. What I'm going to do is turn that pile with a shovel every couple of weeks, sometimes every week if I'm able to, and water. I can't stress this enough. We want that compost to feel like 30 to 40% moist, almost like a spongy feel. And then this is where the compost thermometer comes into play, where you're going to be able to see if it's still in the green, it means it's still going, it's still cooking, and it's still in the process of breaking down the ingredients. Once it starts to decrease out of that green area, you're going to keep turning it, keep it moist, and the whole process can take between 1 to 3 months to cure. So the final contents of your bin, when it's ready, what it should do is crumble in your hands, and it should have an earthy smell. And you should see this photo here from the Oregon State University Extension Catalog. This is a good example of compost that is at or near finished. So finally, and now that you're ready to apply it, you're going to rake in a 1/4 inch layer into your lawn in the fall, and then sprinkle some on your flower and vegetable beds. That's what I do with my finished compost, and I got great results in the spring and summer. So I'm going to take a pause here and see if there are any questions from folks. And Lisa, do I just need to look in the chat?
You do have a question from Wanda actually in the chat.
Okay, great. So Wanda asks, do you recommend using a mower to chop up your leaves or an edge trimmer? I've done both. For me, Wanda, I like to use the mower because of the volume of leaves that I get from my neighbors. It would take a long time with the trimmer, but both solutions are possible. Yeah. So please continue adding questions in the chat if you have them. When we talk about composting, you're going to find how much you enjoy the process. You're going to find how much fun it is. It's a great activity with your family, and it's a great way to help the environment. And so our next task is to figure out, how do we share this this hobby with others? How do we share, what we enjoy? How do we encourage others to start composting? I'm curious if anyone would like to come off of mute, add your comments in the chat, or raise your hand and start off with some thoughts. Let's talk about how we can help others understand and see the passion that we have with the composting, and maybe they'll start.
Thanks so much, Jason. I allowed our participant to chat with us, kind of boosted her up. So Megan, if you do have any questions, or you're free to talk and free to share them, or you're free to share them in the chat as well. And Megan did put in the chat, getting school children involved. So turning this possibly into a school project.
Excellent idea. Children are one of the best advertisers ever, aren't they? And they can share that with their parents. They can share that with their family and friends. It's a great idea, Megan.
Yeah, and it seems like, because we've done it with our camp, when we pre-COVID, when we had our in-person summer camps, a lot of the times we had our own compost bin that the kids could then help with, and obviously their lunch scraps went into. So yeah, it becoming a big project is really cool. I love that idea, Megan.
Absolutely.
I was just going to jump in here for 1 second and say, just give a shout out to a really great program locally, the Green Schools Quest, which is a program by the local chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council. And so schools from various age groups, elementary school and even into high school will participate, and they are paired with a mentor from the region, and they focus on various projects. So it could be waste reduction or energy reduction, and whole gamut. But I'll say that I think a lot of the schools, and especially like elementary schools, will do a composting project where they'll build the bins and kind of figure out how to do that and figure out a whole process of how to get their schools involved. So it is a really, really great educational opportunity and program.
Another idea I'll add on top of there too is share the benefits, right? So share the contents. And I have found that people ask me, where did you get this from? And well, it's from my backyard. It's from my bins. And once you share that, oh my gosh, how did you do that? And now you've opened up a conversation with people, and you can share with them your passion and share with them how easy it was for you with getting those bins started, and perhaps they'll be influenced to consider it. So.
Megan put in the chat that her mic isn't working, but she is involved with MGS. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me with composting, I think my favorite thing about that is just how many different benefits, and then you hit on it beautifully, Jason, but just how many different benefits there are to composting. Like, it's not like this, you do this and then you get this. You do this and you are helping, I don't know, just you're creating an ecosystem in your backyard, a native ecosystem in your backyard. You're helping your garden. You can help your neighbors. You're helping mitigate climate change. Like, it's just like this amazing, like, superpower activity that you can do and then grow it, like you're doing, Jason. You're reaching out to your neighbors, you're connecting with people about it. I just love composting. It is just, and yeah, it's just such a great green behavior, like across the board. Like it ticks off so many boxes. I just love it.
Thank you. Yeah. And big shout out to my wife for helping to nudge me in the right direction. And now our whole family can benefit. And it's a fun, you're right. It is such a fun activity, especially in the warmer months, to really go out there and really see the little critters in the bin. And yeah, it's a really fun process.
Yeah, Megan had a good question. And I think I know the answer, but I'm going to leave it to you, Jason.
Yeah, I have chosen not to add meat into my bin. And the reason for that is the critters that will smell that and come around at night. Lots of raccoons and where I live, and cats that unfortunately roam around at night. So I have chosen not to put meat in my bins.
And do you have to do anything special if you do use meat, put meat in there? Do you have to check your temperature differently or more often, or turn it differently?
I'm not 100% sure on that. Megan's asking about grains and cheese. Yeah, I've put bread in there before and cheese that's gone bad. I just want to make sure that I'm covering that up with the browns afterwards, so it's not exposed and not attracting critters.
Makes sense.
And I don't know the answer necessarily, the final answer, because again, like Jason said from the beginning, there's so many different ways to compost. So maybe meat is, does better in a certain method at a residential level. But for example, St. Louis composting, where restaurants, so they have a commercial scale composting operation, and that, the windrows that they have there do get up to a higher temperature than you typically would get at like a residential level. And so that's why they can accept, some meat. They still don't like getting a lot of it, like a little bit of meat, a little bit of bones, even it'll process that. But again, that's at a commercial level. I think typically meat is recommended not to go in there. But again, if that's something that you want to research a little more and see, maybe there is a method of at-home composting that kind of allows that a little bit more than others.
Yeah, if you choose to do that, I would not keep your bin or your pile close to your house, as it can also attract mice as well too. All right.
All right, I think that's it for, oh, sorry, one more question. How is compost different than soil?
That's a great question. My understanding of it, and again, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not an expert, so I'll look to my colleagues to help me with this one. But the compost has a lot more of the broken down nutrients. It's viewed as more of kind of a supplemental way to add onto your soil. My friends on the call might be able to answer that question better than me.
Yeah, I always kind of looked at it as like a vitamin,
Mhm.
you know, like that it's got a lot of what soil has, but like it's just jam packed with the nutrients in one,
It's very concentrated
Concentrated,
nutrients,
yeah.
which is also why like you wouldn't necessarily want to plant plants directly just in compost, because it's almost like too much. It's like steroids. But like adding that to the soil improves the kind of the nitrogen content and some of those things that help plants thrive. But yeah, it's definitely supercharged, like Lisa said.
Absolutely.
And Frank
Hey.
put in the chat. Oh, go ahead, Frank. Sorry. I didn't know if
Hey, hi there, everybody. I was just going to ask, and maybe Wanda knows, there's composting that goes on in the Green Business Challenge in some communities, and that might be a way that everybody could share more. Also, I'm not sure if Wanda might know of much composting that.
So Frank, yeah, the St. Louis Green Business Challenge is another really fantastic program out there regionally, and it's been around this is the 12th year it's been going. And so that's very much geared towards companies or organizations that want to participate. And so it's not necessarily that the composting happens through them, but they help provide resources. If, for example, a business wants to start composting, there is a local, I think that's a really great point though, Frank. There are local, there's a local company. So St. Louis Composting has like an arm where they, so it's a section of their business where they actually pick up food waste and scraps, kind of very similar things that come out of commercial kitchens.
Right.
And they'll take that and they pick it up, and it's again goes to their commercial scale facility. And I'm spacing on the name. Oh, Total Organics Composting is what that part of their business is called. And there are a lot of restaurants that throughout our region that send their stuff there. And actually St. Louis Zoo participates in that program as well. So we've got restaurants that collect, the behind the scenes scraps. So like all the stuff from preparing food, but then we also send like the front of house material, like for example, the compostable wares from our restaurants, and two of our largest restaurants, we do send our, all of our plates and all that kind of stuff is compostable. So we send that material there as well. So definitely a great resource to know about. And I wish I had thought of looking up the link, and maybe I'll do that while we still chat. There are some free resources where you can pick up ready compost from the city. So I'll Google for just a moment and post that in the chat as well. So if you ever did want to get fresh finished compost, you can go purchase it at various facilities, including St. Louis Composting, but there's also some opportunities to pick up free ready compost. If you're not quite ready to get started at home, we certainly hope you are, but if not, there are places you can get that material too for your garden.
Sure. Yeah, I was wondering if there, if like some municipalities are in the Green Business Challenge, and they might get started composting, maybe at the city hall or something like that, or
yeah, that's a great point.
If they have enough space or time.
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't know if anyone else
Yeah.
on the call knows if anyone has, if any municipality has started like a pickup service all around like their whole municipality. But I think Lisa can share a little information about a pickup service that's residential as well for
Yeah, there
compost.
are. Yeah, there's residential composting services. They're kind of, it just kind of depends on where you're located. So you can definitely just kind of Google residential composting in St. Louis or the St. Louis area. I
Right.
live in Webster Groves, and I know they just sent out a sustainability survey for the city, and a composting service was actually one of the choices you could prioritize. And I was like, ooh, let's put it up there. So yeah, it's definitely community wide is kind of it's definitely in getting into more communities' priorities and interests, which is really cool. So
Right.
yeah,
Cool. Sounds good.
so Jason,
Thank
if you
you.
wanna, thanks, Frank. Jason, if you wanna close us out, it doesn't look like we've got any other questions.
Yeah, I included this slide here to really drive home the fact what St. Louis Zoo is doing to with our composting program here, and you can see some wonderful achievements that we have here, and 40,000 pounds composted in 2014. If you think about that number, that's 40,000 pounds that did not go to the landfill. Just tremendous, and I'm proud to be working at an organization that does this. So with that, I'll stop my presentation. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'll stay around afterwards if there are any other questions, but thank you for being here and have a great evening.
Yes, thank you all so much for joining us, and big thanks to you, Jason, for your fabulous presentation and for facilitating our discussion tonight. Please be on the lookout for more information on next month's in the new year Community Climate Forum, which will be held January 13th at 5:30 p.m. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, everyone. All right, everyone is
Cool.
left. So thank you so much.
Yay. Good
Yeah.
job.
First
That was
one,
great.
first one there. So